And Moses went up into the mount, and a cloud covered the mount. Exodus 24:15. KJV. And the glory of the Lord abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. Exodus 24:16. KJV. This verse from Exodus 24:15 holds significant meaning within the context of God's covenant relationship with Israel. When Moses ascended Mount Sinai, covered by a cloud, it symbolized the unique and intimate connection between God and his chosen people, Israel. This event was not merely a historical occurrence, but a profound illustration of Israel's exclusive status as God's elect nation. The cloud covering the mount represented God's presence and his willingness to communicate his laws and commandments specifically to Israel through Moses, their appointed leader. This act of divine revelation was not extended to other nations or peoples, underscoring the belief that God's covenant, laws, and blessings were intended solely for the Israelites. The ascent of Moses into the cloud-covered mount serves as a powerful reminder of Israel's special relationship with God, setting them apart from all other nations and emphasizing their unique role in God's plan for redemption and the establishment of his kingdom on earth. And it came to pass, as Moses entered into the tabernacle, the cloudy pillar descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses. Exodus 33:9, KJV. And all the people saw the cloudy pillar stand at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose up and worshipped, every man in his tent door. Exodus 33:10, KJV. Exodus 33:9 represents a pivotal moment in Israel's unique relationship with God. This verse describes how the cloudy pillar, a manifestation of God's presence, descended and stood at the entrance of the tabernacle as Moses entered. This divine interaction highlights several key aspects of the exclusive covenant between God and Israel. 1. Direct communication. The fact that the Lord talked with Moses emphasizes the special access Israel had to God through their appointed leader. This direct communication was not extended to other nations, reinforcing Israel's privileged position. 2. Divine presence. The cloudy pillar's descent symbolizes God's willingness to dwell among his chosen people, the Israelites. This visible manifestation of God's presence was a unique blessing reserved for Israel alone. 3. Covenant confirmation. This encounter serves as a continual reaffirmation of the covenant God made with Israel, distinguishing them from all other peoples on earth. 4. Mediatorial role. Moses' role as mediator between God and Israel underscores the exclusive nature of this relationship. No other nation had such a divinely appointed intermediary. 5. Sacred space. The tabernacle, as the meeting place between God and Israel, represents the exclusive spiritual territory where God's presence dwelt among his chosen people. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion, and upon her assemblies, a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night, for upon all the glory shall be a defense. Isaiah 4:5 KJV. Isaiah 4:5 holds profound significance in illustrating God's special relationship with Israel. This verse describes the Lord's divine protection and presence specifically over Mount Zion and her assemblies, which represent the dwelling places of the chosen people. The imagery of the cloud, smoke, and flaming fire recalls the Exodus, where God led and protected Israel in the wilderness, thus emphasizing the continuity of God's covenant with his people. The promise of creating these manifestations upon every dwelling place suggests an intimate and pervasive divine presence among the Israelites, not extended to other nations. The verse's declaration that, upon all the glory shall be a defense, underscores God's commitment to safeguarding Israel, his chosen nation. This divine protection is exclusive to Israel, reinforcing their unique status and the special care God provides to his elect. While he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud, which said, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him. Matthew 17:5, KJV. Matthew 17:5 is a pivotal verse that reaffirms the unique relationship between God, his chosen people Israel, and the Messiah. This passage, describing the Transfiguration, is interpreted as a divine confirmation of the Messiah's role as the prophesied deliverer specifically for Israel. The bright cloud overshadowing them is reminiscent of the cloud that led the Israelites in the wilderness, symbolizing God's presence among his chosen people. The voice from the cloud, declaring the Messiah as God's beloved Son, is seen as a direct message to the Israelite disciples present, Peter, James, and John, representing the elect of Israel. The command to hear ye him is understood as an instruction specifically to the Israelites to heed the teachings of their Messiah. This verse is not interpreted as a universal declaration for all peoples, but rather as a continuation of God's exclusive covenant with Israel, now centered on the person of the Messiah as the fulfillment of Israelite prophecy and hope. The Transfiguration event, in this view, serves to validate the Messiah's authority and message specifically for the benefit of Israel, reinforcing the belief that God's plan of salvation and revelation continues to be focused solely on his chosen people, the Israelites. And there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." Mark 9:7, KJV. Mark 9:7 is a crucial verse that reinforces the unique covenant between God and his chosen people, Israel. This passage, describing the Transfiguration, states, "And there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, 'This is my beloved Son, hear him.'" The cloud overshadowing the disciples is interpreted as a direct parallel to the divine presence that guided the Israelites in the wilderness, symbolizing God's continued faithfulness to his covenant people. The voice from the cloud, declaring the Messiah as God's beloved Son, is understood as a divine affirmation specifically for the Israelite disciples present. This declaration is not seen as a universal pronouncement, but rather as a confirmation of the Messiah's role in fulfilling God's promises to Israel. The command to hear him is interpreted as a direct instruction to the Israelites to heed the teachings of their long-awaited Messiah, emphasizing the exclusive nature of this revelation. In this view, the Transfiguration event serves to validate the Messiah's authority and message solely for Israel, underscoring the belief that God's plan of salvation and divine communication continues to be focused exclusively on his chosen people, the Israelites. This interpretation reinforces the doctrine that the Messiah's mission and teachings are primarily, if not solely, for the benefit and redemption of Israel, rather than non-Israelites. While he thus spake, there came a cloud and overshadowed them, and they feared as they entered into the cloud. Luke 9:34, KJV. Luke 9:34 is affirming God's continued relationship with his chosen people. The verse states, "While he thus spake, there came a cloud and overshadowed them, and they feared as they entered into the cloud." This event, part of the Transfiguration narrative, is interpreted as a divine manifestation exclusively for the benefit of Israel. The cloud that overshadows the disciples is seen as a direct parallel to the cloud that guided and protected the Israelites during the Exodus, symbolizing God's enduring presence among his elect. The fear experienced by the disciples as they entered the cloud is understood as a reverent awe before the divine presence, reminiscent of the Israelites' responses to God's manifestations in the Old Testament. In this context, the Messiah's presence on the mountain, along with Moses and Elijah, is viewed as a confirmation of his role as the fulfillment of the law and prophets, specifically for Israel. The cloud's appearance is not interpreted as a universal sign, but as a continuation of God's exclusive covenant with Israel, now centered on the Messiah. This event is seen as reinforcing the belief that God's revelations and divine interactions are reserved solely for his chosen people, the Israelites, and that the Messiah's mission is primarily, if not exclusively, for their redemption and restoration. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Luke 21:27, KJV. And Luke 21:27 in the context of Israel's ultimate redemption. The verse states, "And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory." This prophetic declaration is interpreted as a promise specifically for the chosen people of Israel, not for humanity at large. The imagery of the Messiah coming in a cloud with power and great glory is seen as a direct fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies concerning Israel's deliverance and restoration. The cloud symbolizes divine presence, reminiscent of God's manifestations to Israel throughout their history, from the Exodus to the Tabernacle. This coming of the Messiah is understood not as a universal event, but as the culmination of God's covenant promises to Israel. The power and great glory mentioned are interpreted as the Messiah's authority to establish the kingdom promised to Israel, vindicating them before the nations and fulfilling their role as God's chosen people. This event is viewed as the moment when Israel's elect status will be fully realized and manifested to the world. The Israelite exclusive doctrine emphasizes that this glorious return is primarily, if not solely, for the benefit of the true Israelites, marking their final redemption and elevation as God's preeminent nation. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory. Mark 13:26 KJV. Mark 13:26 holds profound significance for God's chosen people. The verse states, "And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with great power and glory." This prophetic declaration is interpreted as a promise specifically for Israel, not for humanity at large. The imagery of the Messiah coming in the clouds with great power and glory is seen as a direct fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies concerning Israel's ultimate vindication and restoration. The clouds symbolize divine presence, reminiscent of God's manifestations to Israel throughout their history, from the Exodus to the Tabernacle. This coming of the Messiah is understood not as a universal event, but as the culmination of God's covenant promises exclusively to Israel. The great power and glory mentioned are interpreted as the Messiah's authority to establish the kingdom promised to Israel, elevating them above all nations and fulfilling their role as God's chosen people. This event is viewed as the moment when Israel's elect status will be fully realized and manifested to the world. The Israelite exclusive doctrine emphasizes that this glorious return is primarily, if not solely, for the benefit of the true Israelites, marking their final redemption and exaltation as God's preeminent nation.